DSTV, turning on your world.
The bucket loads of climate finance that we have at the macro level to the very grassroots to impact the vast array of the businesses we have, majority of whom are in the micro, small, and medium-sized category, because the belief that we have is that everyone has a place and role to play as far as climate change and mitigation is concerned. So delighted to have you also on our digital channels, that is YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We are delighted to welcome you to be part of this conversation. Having set the scene, it is now my distinct honor to welcome on stage Mr. Joseph Murabula, the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Climate Innovation Center, to kick off with a welcoming note. Let's give him a round of applause as he makes his way here.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, our esteemed partners, karibuni sana. Let me again welcome you to this Africa Climate Investment Summit 2025 and start off by wishing you a very good day. Good morning. Good morning once more. Very well. So once more, welcome to the Africa Climate Investment Summit 2025. Many of you were here 2023 when we did the first Climate Investment Summit, focused then on Kenya, but now we've come back and hopefully better as it is. This very same month, October, and literally this very same week, 2 years ago, we met here and we had a conversation about how to ensure that funds flow to MSME or micro and small enterprise. And as you know, that is the backbone of the economy, because 95% of all businesses in the country are actually MSME. And at the end of that summit, we took feedback, and many of you told us that this is a very good conversation to have, that the Climate Investment Summit is a good platform, but you would like to have it bigger and better. And so we listened. And so today, as we kickstart the second edition of the Climate Investment Summit, we are not now just doing it for Kenya, but we have gone continent-wide, and now we have the Africa Climate Investment Summit. We are here not because of anything else, but because this is the right moment, and this is the moment that demands that everybody puts their best foot forward to address one of the biggest challenges one of the biggest development challenges in the world, and that's the challenge of climate change. And so, as I welcome you, just know that you are part of this very, very important conversation. And hopefully, we can be able to build this platform together as it is. We learned a lot of lessons from our first summit 2 years ago, and we have looked at data across the entire globe, but specifically in our continent of Africa. And what we see is that we have a very huge gap in terms of climate financing on the continent. The latest figures we've looked at basically place that number annually at about $146 billion, so to speak. And what, if you disaggregate that number, basically what you find is that private capital in particular is, I would say, hesitant. It is not being fully felt in terms of addressing the challenge of climate change. Climate change has largely been left to the public sector. So most of the money flowing there is public money. Close, depending on the numbers you look at, anywhere between 15 to 20% is private capital, and then the balance is public capital. What basically that means is that we, as the people playing in the private space, need to do better. But even the little that comes in as private capital, if you look at it, again, you find that the real patient capital, or what you'd call equity, is somewhere just around, below 10%, somewhere around 5%, so to speak, is equity. The bulk of it is instruments that have debt characteristics, as it were. Now, this kind of situation, many, and including myself, call it a situation of market failure. The market is basically not responding the way it should, and resources are not being allocated in the right place, so to speak. Okay, so in essence, therefore, what we see, and I was having a conversation earlier today with Jao from the Africa Development Bank. What we see globally is that we have a capital system that is looking for large-scale de-risked solutions to the climate, and leaving out the smaller, more impactful enterprises. What it basically means that on the one hand you have opportunity, and on the other hand you have capital, and the two of them are not speaking the same language, as it were. Capital is looking for the risked projects, and is looking for them at scale. On the other hand, where the opportunity is on the lower end, small and growing enterprises, as it were. And all of us work in this space, and that is a challenge we confront daily. And we come up with many ways to try and address that challenge. And so for years, we at KCIC were mostly focused on building phenomenal enterprises, or phenomenal cars, so to speak. We're focused on ensuring that we can have enterprises that come in as ideas or as prototypes and then become on their own, looked at simply, become very good enterprises. So brilliant ideas leading to brilliant enterprises. And we've done that for the last 13 years. But we have learned a vital lesson in the process. One, that you may have a brilliant car or a brilliant enterprise, so to speak. But that brilliant car, be it a Ferrari or whatever it is useless unless you can also have a support system, unless you can have fuel stations, unless you can have an army of mechanics who take care of the car whenever. All right. Unless you can have an army of mechanics who are able to fix the car whenever it breaks down. In other words, what I'm basically saying is that this is a problem of market failure on continental scale, and you cannot fix it by basically supporting one enterprise at a time, as it is. And therefore, it's time for us not just to build cars, but to build whole highways with the supporting ecosystem and the supporting infrastructure to confront the challenge of climate change. What we are saying is that we just need not build climate entrepreneurship ecosystems, but we need to build them at scale, so to speak. We need to be able to build the infrastructure that ensures investment flows to those enterprises. We need to be able to build the knowledge that supports it. We need to be able to build the technology that then takes care of it whenever things are broken. And so that's our mission for the next 3 days. The mission for the Africa Climate Investment Summit this year is basically to build that highway, to build that infrastructure for investment, so to speak. And so what we are doing here is not just another conference. Those are many. And I know many of you would have chosen any other, but you chose to be here because you are looking for that meaningful impact. You are looking to go away inspired to be able to support climate enterprise in Africa as it were. And so over the next 3 days, our role is to talk less, but build a lot more. And so what we will have is, of course, we'll have a lot of dialogue, but we'll have a lot of deal rooms. We will have a lot of investment-focused conversations so that then we can move away from just solving problems to building whole platforms for purposes of addressing this challenge. We learned this lesson, as I said before, over the last 13 years. And so in this year, and many of you were in this room in June when we launched KCIC's new strategy, KCIC 4.0, and we are looking at that as our blueprint, as our contribution towards building the Africa Climate Investment Highway, so to speak. And so today, we bring everybody on board in line with that strategy so that then we can co-design ideas, co-design solutions, and confront the problem of lack of sufficient funding flows to climate projects. We have spoken about this problem for long. Everywhere you go, people are lamenting. We just don't have sufficient funding. We don't have sufficient technical assistance. But together, we can confront that problem. And that's what we are going to be doing the next 3 days. Because the Africa Climate Investment Platform, which we will then be launching here on the 3rd day on Friday, is our answer to this problem, so to speak. It is our digital marketplace, basically our highway towards connecting all the actors within the space. Second, in addition to the Africa Climate Investment Platform, we will be launching a catalytic new revolving fund, again here on Friday, which is what we hope to be our answer to the equity gap that I just mentioned before, and hopefully support equity funding flows to the smaller and medium-sized enterprises as it is. So what are we basically asking of you as we start? This gap as it is. What we've seen, what the models we have built tell us that if we work together as an Africa-focused ecosystem, we can basically be able to unlock over 2.4 trillion in institutional capital, because we know if you look at the money that's lying in our pension funds across the entire continent, if you look at the money that's lying in our banking systems, if you look at the money that is lying in our domestic saving mobilization vehicles, then you basically begin to see that this gap that we have can actually be solved by solutions that are already on the continent as it is. For government, and we know the CS is not here, but she's on the way, for government, we've worked together over the last many years, and you've provided the enabling environment. So what we ask of you now is that then we continue to work together, but you harmonize the policies across borders, because the first aspiration on Africa Agenda 2063 is a prosperous, connected continent. That's what it says. So for us to be able to do that, we just not need, we need the enabling environment. We need to be able to build the highways, but also harmonize policies across the rest of across African countries, so that then we can build a single, seamless market for green investment. So that's what we ask of you as a government. In the room too are people who are doing the heavy lifting, our innovators and our entrepreneurs towards the agenda of greening economies. So what we are asking of you is that to take advantage of this platform that we are building for you, so to speak. We want you to bring your ambition, we want you to bring your grit, and we want you to bring your ideas to the table, so that then the capital that is sitting in this room, the capital that is sitting across the investment houses of Africa, can be able to see you as the proof of concept. They can be able to see you as people they can learn from, and they are here, they are therefore here to meet you, learn from you, and ensure that then we can be able to work together. So as I conclude my opening remarks for today, what I ask that let us build on to the momentum that we started off in 2023. We've had quite a number of success stories from that conference then. So we are hoping to build on that, and so that then we can move from not just doing a successful event over the next 3 days, but building the momentum that ensures that we can be able to solve this problem. And that can only happen if we work together. So that when we leave here on Thursday evening, at the end of this conference, we will not be just be counting 1,000 people who attended the conference or 1,000 attendees for the conference, but we will be one single strong coalition working to build the financial architecture for green enterprises of the future. So that then we can have sessions coming up. Let me stop here and basically wish you a very good event. So my call to you, my call to action for all of you is let's get to work from now on building the superhighway for green investment across the country. I thank you.
Once again, a round of applause for Joseph Murapula for his opening remarks. Some quick takeaways from what he has just told us. The first one is that we have a bit of concentration on public sector-driven financing. When it comes to climate investment, we need to crowd in private capital. And of course, there's a question there, there's a discussion there, Joseph, to be had about a risk and return, which of course the private players are very keenly looking at. The second one is that we should be looking forward to the Africa Climate Investment Platform, which will be part of the launch taking place within the 3 days. We will also be looking at the launch of the Catalytic Revolving Fund. Mic check, can you hear me? Yes. We'll also be looking at the launch of the Catalytic Revolving Fund, which also should be taking place over the next 3 days. He mentioned the breakouts into deal rooms. Do we have the QR code for the deal rooms? Are you able to project it somewhere on screen? There will be a QR code, and once you scan it, you'll be able to select which deal room you want to be part of, and that will be able to enable us to be seamless in our transition when it comes to that moment of the program. Next on stage is my delight to call Mr. Joao Cunha, Division Manager, Renewable Energy, Africa Development Bank. Please join us on stage. Let's appreciate him as he makes his way here.
So I'll have to multitask with my notes and the microphone, right? So good morning, everyone. My credentials are behind me. Just a little bit about myself and the work I do. I manage investments in funds and in projects. I manage in particular the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, which is AFDB's largest thematic investment facility for climate and renewables. We have a 12-year track record and have been very active in channeling funding to smaller projects, to entrepreneurs, to the private sector. So trying to sort of push back or, push forward on an agenda that is not the mainstream for the African Development Bank. As James said, the African Development Bank is primarily focused on large-scale projects, big infrastructure, public sector projects. So we're trying to sort of carve out more space for the bank in climate and renewables. So distinguished guests, partners and innovators, good morning. It is a profound privilege to be here in Nairobi, a city that has become a global symbol for both the urgency and the immense opportunity of climate action on our continent. I must begin by commending the Kenya Climate Innovation Center and all the partners for convening the powerful platform. Your decade of frontline work in building a pipeline of climate entrepreneurs is the very foundation upon which a prosperous green Africa will be built. Your commitment is not just timely, it is necessary and transformative. We are here today to confront a great paradox. The world sees Africa as the continent most at risk from climate change, and they are not wrong. Our continent contributes less than 4% of global emissions, yet we bear the disproportionate burden of its impacts, from droughts that threaten our food systems to floods that challenge our infrastructure. Estimates place losses between 7 and 15 billion annually from climate-related damage, around 2 to 5% of GDP, a figure expected to rise to 50 billion by 2050 on current trends. But Africa is not defined by risk. It is defined by its resilience and its solutions. Across our nations, a new generation of climate-smart enterprises is rising. In agribusiness, renewable energy, waste management, and nature-based solutions, they are not just developing innovations, they are forging lifelines for our communities and building the engines of inclusive, sustainable growth. With our abundant renewable energy resources, our wealth of critical minerals, and a dynamic young workforce, Africa is uniquely positioned to leapfrog legacy systems. We are not just participating in the green transition. We have the potential to become a global leader. And yet, despite the undeniable potential, the financial architecture of the world is failing us. Let me be clear. In 2023, global climate finance flows exceeded $1.3 trillion US. It is a staggering sum. But the capital flow into Africa remains alarmingly low, less than 3.5% of that total. This is nowhere near the estimated $200 billion per year our continent needs to meet its climate goals by 2030. This disparity is not just a funding gap. It is a justice gap. The world is writing trillion-dollar checks for the green transition, but Africa is receiving what amounts to a rounding error. Our climate needs are urgent, our solutions are viable, and our entrepreneurs are ready. What we lack is equitable access to capital. So obviously, the private sector is central to closing this gap. They are the drivers of innovation and creators of green jobs. Yet, private finance in Africa remains stuck at just 18% of total climate finance. Why? Because of perceived risks, a lack of scale, and immature project pipelines. At the African Development Bank, we do not see these as insurmountable barriers. We see them as market failures that require market-based solutions. Our role is not just to be a catalytic investor. It is to be the architect of that bridge that connects private capital to African opportunity. Through the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, we are actively building this bridge. We are deploying risk capital and enabling expert teams to solve these exact problems. This includes catalytic investments in venture capital funds, such as Kawi Safi Funds 2 and Persistent Climate Venture Builder Fund, supporting climate startups to reach commercial scale, addressing the early stage equity gap for ventures in solar power, circular economy, electric mobility, and agri-tech, with a strong emphasis on women and locally owned businesses. Likewise, we are investing in the Cross-Boundary Energy Access Platform, the first dedicated investment vehicle for mini-grids on the continent, and pioneering a carbon finance facility with Burn Manufacturing to support the rollout of electric cookstoves. These are strategic interventions designed to de-risk the market, prove the commercial viability of climate tech, create bankable pipelines, and ultimately catalyze private investors at scale. And Africa is not waiting. We are seeing other pioneering finance mechanisms sprout across the continent, from green bonds in Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, to the continent-wide ambition of the Africa Carbon Markets Initiative, the groundbreaking debt for nature swaps like the one seen in Gabon. These are proof that our future will be financed by our own ingenuity. So the Africa Climate Investment Summit is designed to accelerate this momentum. It is the crucial convening point where the capital we are mobilizing meets the entrepreneurs KCIC is nurturing. It is a launchpad for accessing blended finance, a marketplace for carbon credits, and a platform to elevate Africa's investment priorities ahead of COP30. And let us be clear, climate action must be inclusive. Women, youth, and community-led enterprises must be at the very center of our investment strategies. They are not a social add-on. They are a source of deep resilience and unique market insights, making our investments more impactful and more successful. So today, as we prepare for COP30, let Africa speak with one voice, a voice of urgency, opportunity, and leadership. Let us envision the Africa we are building, where every community has clean energy, where farmers thrive with climate-smart technologies, and where green jobs empower a new generation to lead. This is not a distant dream, but a future within our reach. So I call on investors, the governments, and the leaders in this room. The blueprints are here. The talent is here. The African Development Bank is here as your unwavering partner to co-create solutions, commit resources, and collaborate boldly. Let us turn climate risk into climate resilience. Let us turn Africa's potential into Africa's prosperity. Thank you very much.
Once again, let's appreciate him for his remarks. That was the voice of the DFI community, the African Development Bank, of course, leading that cause and reminding us that there is a need for us to ensure that we are de-risking investments, to ensure then that we have capital flowing in, and also that the global financial architecture is not optimally structured to address the needs, especially those facing the Global South. Thank you so much for your remarks. Next on stage, I'd like to call Mr. Emmanuel Etaderhi, Executive Secretary, UNDP Financial Center for Sustainability, to give us his opening remarks. Let's appreciate him as he makes his way here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emmanuel Etaderi, Executive Secretary, Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos. It's a UNDP institution in 45 countries across 5 continents in the world, headquartered in Geneva. In Kenya, we have it as the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. It's in Egypt, it's in Morocco, it's in Cote d'Ivoire, and then in Nigeria. That's my job that is for the service of humanity, but my bread and butter job is as head of government affairs at FMDQ, Africa's foremost vertically integrated financial market infrastructure, with several subsidiaries spanning across depository, exchange, CCP, and technology sectors. It's a privilege to be here. It's my first time in Kenya, but over the past 7 years or more, I've been working with Kenya-based institutions to drive the growth of the Nigerian green bond market in Nigeria. We've been behind every single issuance of a green instrument, and we've supported the sovereign, corporates, and the subnational sectors to issue green bonds in Nigeria. It's indeed great to be here. I want to appreciate the Kenya Climate Innovation Center for organizing this very wonderful event. I think this is the beginning of great strides and achievement for us as Africans to solve this vexing problem of access to funding or to finance for climate resilient SMEs. There's been so much talk over the years about the fact that Africa is not responsible for the challenges we face in climate change, but suffers the major part of the problem, the consequence of climate change. But I'm going to go beyond talking to looking at key solutions. I think the solution is glaring us in the face, it's staring us in the face. I think it's time we looked at it, take the bull by the horn, and then address the problem. We cannot solve this problem by relying on existing financial structures. If fossil fuel-related projects can easily get funding from the traditional banks, and they do not get, and the traditional banks are not ready to fund climate resilient projects, we should create a disruptive system that will enable climate resilient projects access funding easily. My solution is very simple. Just copy. It's only when you're in school that copying is a crime. Once you get out of the campus, you realize that it is very legal, very normal to copy. But you copy and you innovate, you improve on it. Japan copied from the US in the car industry, car making industry. The Indians copied from the Silicon Valley, and they became ICT giants. The CEO of some of the top technology companies in the world are Indians. They learned. The Germans copied. Everybody copies and improves on it. So what are we trying? What am I saying that we should copy? Go to the US and look at the existing GB50. GB50 is a Green Banks 50, a coalition of green banks in the US. They took advantage of the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. They took advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act that Joe Biden introduced that has over $300 billion. And they are quasi-public-private financial institutions that provide funding for projects that align with climate change. They are present in the 50 states of the US, but only about 40 of them have agreed to come together to ensure that funding is always available for climate smart projects, particularly in the renewable energy space. If we can copy this model, I'll speak more about it during this session, I think we'll be addressing that problem. If you really want to solve this problem, you have to commoditize, you have to make available on an easy scale access to funding. If any fossil fuel-related project entrepreneur can walk into a bank and get a loan, somebody who is in the green space should be able to walk into a bank and get a green loan. But there are basic steps we need to take. First, we need to proselytize, we need to campaign, we need to preach, we need to create awareness so that everybody is aware that climate change is not just a do-good business. climate change business is profitable business. Elon Musk can't be in any way regarded as a dumb fellow. He took a bet on electric cars. He's the richest man in the world today for a reason. He's made so much money from electric cars, and you cannot dissociate electric cars from climate change. That's a key example. We are not mentioning the success stories. We only talk about the emotional aspects. Let's look at the business case. The guy who started BYD in China, is one of the richest men, the 8th richest man in China today. BYD is one of the biggest electric companies in the world, if not the biggest. Is that a sub story? Is that an emotional story? There's nothing emotional about that. BYD cars are now in Nigeria. About 7-8 years ago, when FSD Africa Kenya and ourselves mentioned the fact that one day there'll be electric cars in Nigeria, we were laughed to scorn. They didn't believe us. They thought we were just high on some cheap drug. But there are electric cars in Nigeria. Some people said, but there's no power. Power is unstable. Electricity is unstable. But there are electric cars in Nigeria, and people are driving them. So we need to be more convincing, more structured, more deliberate in our conversations around the transition. I want to stop by saying that the time is now for us to look at the practical aspects of this problem and address it head on and resolve it. Thank you.
Many thanks, and let's appreciate once again Emmanuel from FMDQ, all the way in Nigeria. And I think, Emmanuel, Kenya has a lot to learn from FMDQ and Nigeria, especially around the issuance of green bonds. Ever since we launched our green bond framework, we have only had one that has gone to market. So there's some work to be done there, Murabula and team, I guess. We are done with our opening session and the opening remarks. We want to transition into the plenary session. Now, the theme there is raising African investment, ownership, and opportunity. Before that, I'm told we are now ready with our QR code for the deal rooms. Are we ready? The QR code, are you able to project it on screen so that we can quickly scan? There we go. If you scan that QR code, you'll be able to select which deal room you want to be part of, and that will be right after the break. We'll have two. There's one on sustainable agriculture. This breakout room 2 has circular economy, climate setting, and that list goes on. And there are other deal rooms there on entrepreneurship, renewable energy, and nature-based solutions. Now, back to our plenary session. Let me give you a few minutes to just wrap up scanning this QR code. Are we good? Remember, that is for the deal rooms. We're now back here for our plenary session, raising African investment, ownership, and opportunity. Now, to speak on climate investment, we have the green finance specialist from FSD Kenya, and that is Madam Sarah McKenna. Sarah, if you could just make your way to the podium, let's appreciate her as she joins us on stage to set the scene, after which we shall have a panel discussion. Sarah, karibu sana.
Good morning. Good morning. We've been given quite some information and data to kickstart our day and kickstart the conference. So I'm imagining we should have some energy and be very enthusiastic about what we're looking forward for the next 3 days. So like I have been introduced, I work with FSD Kenya, and we've been introduced in a way. The speaker who came before me talked about, he gave us a new name, FSD Africa Kenya. So FSD Africa and FSD Kenya are two different institutions, but we're very related and we work together, and they've been doing some excellent work on sustainable linked bonds. And I've been working with Nigeria, and I can confirm that there is excellent work that has been done within the West African market, and we've begun the work here, so I need to report that. So Julian, in the next few months, we should have a green bond issued. I hope we will do that. And I'm hoping that the NSE CEO will hear this and remember that the pressure is on because of the work that we're doing with them. I am not seeing my presentation up, but I'll continue speaking to the few points and the few things that I needed to mention. The first thing is, all I will do is repeat everything that has been said by the first three speakers, because the data is out there, and we know what Africa needs and the challenges that we have. And the gap is something that we've been speaking about every COP. We talk about the funding gap for Africa in terms of we need more financing. But the thing that I can mention and talk about right now is, say, if I told the investors in the room right now to stand, they would all tell me they're looking for deals and they're looking for investable opportunities to invest in. And the challenge is, what do we then do about this gap between the demand and supply side of capital? And that's, thank you, that's one of the biggest challenges that we face today. And what we do at FSD Africa is to see, how do we make financial markets work? FSD, I've even adopted FSD Africa now, FSD Kenya. What we do, and it's both for Africa and Kenya, is to make financial markets work. And for us is to look at what exists in the market, what is being done by the PEs, VCs, our commercial banks, and how can we make this work for the people that are looking for the capital. And that's what we're doing. And, So the next thing that I was to talk about has been alluded to by the three speakers, and it's the gap in financing for both Africa and for Kenya. We're only able to raise about 23% annually of what we need for green and climate financing. What it means is we have opportunity, but we do not have the funding. But again, I repeat the point I had said earlier, but the investors are still looking, or where do they put their money? And we are still talking about the challenges of we do not have investable businesses. But that's why we're here today, and we've been having this discussion, and KCAC has existed for the number of years that they've existed to continue creating businesses that are investable. And I'll want to give, to talk about something that we are, we've been doing at FSD Kenya for a while. So we launch a report every 2 years, the FinAccess report. And this year, our report that was launched end of last year, we tried to look at climate investments. And the one thing I have to mention is, when you look at the statistics that you can see on the screen, the sad news is very few people are doing this deliberately. But the good news is, herein lies the solution to what we need to do. That when we looked at the statistics, that the overall investment in what we would call climate solutions was not anything to take home about. But the thing was that we realized where there was a need, then these investments existed. Where the solar solutions seemed to be more was where these were areas that were off-grid. It's not the people in Nairobi that we keep on encouraging and saying, can we try and get alternative to the main grid? So it means that if we are creating a solution, and I'll speak to that in my in a slide that will be coming, is we need to innovate for the market. You need to be looking at what are the challenges that the market is experiencing, and you develop a solution for it. I like to mention a point here as I also speak to my next point. When we look at the demand and supply side of innovation, one of the biggest challenges is that we go innovate and then go to the market to tell them about our excellent solutions. We do not go to the market first to look at what are the challenges that the market is facing. I want all of us to have M-Kopa at the back of our minds. Then I'll come back to that conversation. Here is another set of statistics. And because I don't want to bore you with all the data and statistics and tell you all that we found from FinAccess, I'll ask you to check our website. And we have quite some statistics there. And the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has a whole dashboard that you can play around with the data to see what's happening within the different counties on green investments and what are the opportunities that we can take advantage of. And here we were looking at, once you experience climate shocks, what happens? While I was looking at this presentation, one of the things that for sure I knew is most of us do nothing. And that's why we have the classic lady. I think there's a lady that goes on and on every year talking about serikali saidia in the Budalangi area. Because we're not really doing anything about what's happening in climate change. We just wish it away and hope, let's move because the floods are coming. But the question is, we have innovations that some have come out of KCAC, others within the ecosystem where we can tell the flood will be coming in this number of months. What are we doing? Because the same region will experience a drought a few months after. So there seems to be a bit of disconnect in what we do in terms of the challenges that we experience, that is climate effects, and our reaction. We are very reactionary in how we respond. So we, of course, were looking at the finance side of it on what people are doing. Very few people are going to their savings, credit, and claiming insurance. And that's the other side. These are issues that we know every year. How many of us have even gone ahead to insure against climate shocks? Very few people, and we think it is only for the people with large-scale farms, and it doesn't concern us. So when the shocks then happen, then we all are wondering what to do. Yet when you go to a number of our insurance companies, this is a solution that is there, but we don't take advantage of it. So what next for Africa? And these were my thoughts and things that I was thinking about and we've been discussing. And this is where I said, let's pack a bit the M-Kopa story that I'll come back to speak to on my second point, domestic capital, ACS. From the ACS declaration, the one agreement that was there is we must use our resources as Africa. The three speakers that spoke before me mentioned that as a point. I think if you've been in this space for long enough, one of the things that you know is this has been a defining year for us. We've understood that development financing will not continue as has been. We have to think about our local solutions. We have to also add into what is coming to us. So if we are going to a development partner to ask for financing, what is that catalyzing? It is no longer business as usual. It's going to be catalytic financing, that if we are going in with a fund that Murabula spoke about, it means that we are showing the ripple effect that this will have. So when we talk about domestic capital, ACS, there was a commitment for 50 billion annually. I can imagine if you remember the statistics that have been mentioned, you know, this seems like very ambitious because we are not even getting anywhere close to this. But the thing is, we have capital that we have sitting with us that we are able to take advantage of and use to get local solutions for ourselves. The next point is on what I spoke about earlier, on market-driven solutions. There's one big challenge that I see in a number of innovations that even come to us as market players, that we innovate first, and you believe that this is a solution for the market. But the market really is not looking for that specific solution. So you struggle for the next number of years. You're trying to explain to us how excellent this solution is. But the challenge is you did not first go to the market to understand where is the shoe paining, where is the shoe hurting, so that we come and get a solution for it. And that's why I asked us to pack the M-Kopa story. For a very long time, we heard about M-Kopa. But the moment they got into the business of giving access to phones, that was a defining moment for their business model, because that's a need. If today your phone is switched off, you will do everything, call your relatives, talk to everyone to make sure your phone is working again. And that's just an example. I know there's the politics behind it and everything behind that, but the thing that for me makes me think about it is this then is what the market was looking for. That's why when we're talking solar solutions, where should we be going? It's the areas that are off the grid, because they understand that, yes, we need lighting. But we are all concentrating, and we want to speak to the Nairobians and encourage them to ditch Kenya Power and start using solar solutions. And that's the struggle that we continue experiencing. But if we are able to go back to the market and look at what is the biggest pain of the Nairobi residents, and we talk about that and see, okay, I think transport is. And we're able to develop a solution around that, and it gives them a solution to what is actually a problem for them, then we will have another Safaricom M-Pesa story coming in. Because that's a solution that came to the market, and we are to our market, and we no longer have to put money in envelopes to send to my grandmother in the village. So we need to come up with solutions that the market needs. So before you innovate, and now here I'm speaking to the innovators, go to the market. Otherwise, you will come to the investors, and the question we will keep asking is, what is your total addressable market? The three of us who tried to pilot your project are not enough for you to invest, for us to invest. And then the final point is, I know I was doing the most with the graphic here, lazy capital. I think this was spoken about. We are very risk averse. We only invest in things that we are sure we will not lose our money. And we don't need to think too much about it. But the question is, what are we doing as an ecosystem that is making the pension funds not attracted to us? Because instead of us having a conversation every year of pension funds have a lot of money in Africa, all these endowments, we have the SACCO deposits, and they're not investing in green businesses. It means because they are still looking for areas to put their money, we need to do something different. And here is to create businesses, like I mentioned, scalable businesses. It is no longer our businesses, and this, I think this was mentioned by the last speaker who said that green is no longer just a thing for us to do. We have to create a business case from it. The days where we used to speak about green as a good thing to do, and every business will come with a CSR project to respond to climate change, those days are gone. So what we need to look at is, this business that I'm talking about, am I able to make money? Because the investor, after speaking about the good things and the social returns and what it's done to the environment, we will again ask you the question, what is the return on investment? When am I going to get my money back? And as I come to a close, the things, again, like I said, I'll be repeating a lot of things that we have been mentioned. Engaging the private sector is no longer an option. This is something we must do. The private sector is the one that does business. Government develops policy. So the whole conversation of us waiting that the government is the one that will continue supporting us in terms of innovation, that I feel we are moving backwards. So the private sector needs to innovate and apologize for the innovations rather than waiting for for the government to be in the forefront. So we need to be looking at partnerships with financial institutions, innovative financial models that have been mentioned, green bonds. Why are we not seeing as the green bond market growing like we would have wanted to see? There's also accountability and transparency in terms of reporting. We need to be looking at these sustainability reports that are being launched. A few weeks ago, I think all the banks launched their reports. Look at them. Why don't we ask questions and want to understand really these statistics that you're talking about and the green loans, where are they? Because we seem not to be feeling that in the market. And finally, in terms of knowledge and being able to disseminate the information that we have, the market needs to understand that climate is business and green is business, and there is an opportunity for us to allow everyone to understand what green is at their level. It does, for us here, we may understand the technical terms, but the rest of the people are looking for solutions and they do not necessarily want to understand what a green bond is. They want to know, how can I invest my money and get it back? And how can I invest my money? How can I also get a solution that makes sense for me? So I think I'll leave it at this point and say, I believe that in the next 3 days, we will be able to have a conversation that will allow us to introspect and think about how do we think about the local solutions and the solutions that will make sense for us as a market. Thank you.
Many thanks to Sarah McKenna from FSD Kenya. One more round of applause for her, please. She has reminded us of the perennial conversation we have with pension funds. And anytime you raise that question that has been raised, you'll be told about trustees and the fact that they have not yet recalibrated their risk appetite to whet their appetite for this kind of products. But we hope that will change in due time. We want to jump into a panel conversation, and I want to call on stage Nakami Walunywa from Village Capital, who will help us steer that session over the next 45 minutes. Let's appreciate her, she is.
All protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Now, this feels very surreal for me because the last time I was standing on this stage, I was actually part of the team at the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. And Joseph, Felix, and team, I remain grateful for the amazing work that you're doing in this ecosystem and for the champions that you're building. Thank you very much. Now, a lot has been said that I don't want to get into because it's already been spoken about by the last 3 speakers that were here, 4 speakers actually that were here. But it's not a secret that Africa is brimming with climate innovation, from renewable energy to sustainable food systems to circular solutions, yet we continue to rely heavily on external aid to fund our problems as Africa. Our session today is going to answer the question, how do we mobilize our own capital, strengthen our own markets, and finance our own transitions? Together, we're going to unpack what it really takes to unlock local capital, from stock exchanges to startups, from institutional investors to community enterprise, and together then take the collective ownership of our continent's green growth journey. Now, I am joined on stage today by a brilliant and diverse group of leaders who are shaping that vision from a very unique lens, from policy to capital markets to grassroots enterprise support and investment matching. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage our first speaker from the Nairobi Securities Exchange Advisory Manager, Gift Corey. Give him a round of applause as he comes on stage. Our next speaker joining us today is Manager Corporate Affairs at the Kenya Climate Innovation Center, Ernest Chitechi. Round of applause for him. The next speaker joining us today is CEO, Raising Capital, Francis Nasiomba. Round of applause for Francis as he joins us on stage. Our next speaker for the day is none other than Managing Director, Somo Africa, Catherine Masolia. And last but not least, a man that I just met today and had a very exciting conversation, 2-minute conversation with, from Nigeria, Executive Secretary, Financial Center for Sustainability for the UNDP, and Vice President, Government Affairs at FMDQ Nigeria, Mr. Let me just get his name again, Emmanuel Etadehi. Round of applause for him as he joins us on stage. All right, I just want to check that your microphones are working. Good. All right, let's take 1 minute each to just introduce ourselves and what we do. 1 minute each, starting with Catherine.
Hey, my name is Catherine Masoli. I'm the Managing Director at Somo Africa. Somo Africa, we work to empower micro and small enterprises, and we especially focus in marginalized communities. In Kenya, we are in the western part of Kenya, coastal Kenya, Nairobi Central. We are also in some refugee camps, the northern part of Kenya, and then we very actively working also in Arusha and Uganda.
Thank you, Catherine. Francis?
Good morning, everyone. Hello, good morning. Yeah, I'm African, so I always want to hear feedback from my team. My name is Francis Nasiomba, and I'm the CEO of Raising Capital. At Raising Capital, we help African businesses to access capital through advisory and tech. On the advisory side, we basically do corporate finance advisory, what you all call investment banking. And we've also created a capital raising platform, a digital capital raising platform, CapitalConnect.Africa, which is intention to actually help African businesses access capital in a far much faster and cost-efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Ernest?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, my name is Ernest Chitechi from Kenya Climate Innovation Center. We are the conveners for this forum today, but we are also the leading incubator for climate technology in Africa. We support enterprises in 5 key sectors. So that's agriculture, renewable energy, water, waste management, and commercial forestry. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gift Corey. I'm the advisory manager for SME growth at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The Nairobi Securities Exchange is the best performing market in Africa in dollar terms for the past 2 years running. And we provide investment solutions for people, for companies, individuals looking for investments, products such as equities, bonds, green bonds, which is part of the conversation we are going to be having here today. And we facilitate this by working with our market intermediaries, DFIs, development partners, to ensure that we bring the best products to market. Looking forward to the conversation here today.
Thank you, Gift.
Good morning once again. My name is Emmanuel Etaderi, Executive Secretary of the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos, which is a UNDP organization that's in 45 countries across 5 continents in the world. And that's my job for humanity, as I mentioned earlier. My day job for bread and butter is with FMDQ as the head of government affairs, and also oversight responsibility for external affairs, and also the project manager for the Nigeria Green Bond Market Development Program, in which we do in partnership with FSD Africa, and we've been running for the past 7-8 years, supporting the issuances of green bonds in Nigeria, supporting the regulators to craft their rule book, and supporting issuers, and other stakeholders within the green economy ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Now, while you still have the microphone, you have just left the stage and spoken about green bonds and how well Nigeria is doing. Can you speak to us about sort of the lessons that we can draw from Nigeria's experience in leveraging pension funds, sovereign wealth, and corporate capital to finance sustainable infrastructure and green investment?
Thank you very much. I'll say that, as I mentioned, and I will keep on repeating it, we've made progress because of our partnership with Kenya in this space. The Nigerian Green Bond Market Development Program was deliberately set up to help drive the growth of the green ecosystem in Nigeria since 2017, 2018, and I've been privileged to be part of that project from scratch. We started with awareness creation. So you're wondering how we've made success, how we've been able to travel this far. We recognized that there was a need to create awareness, speak to people about the whole concept of climate change, the impact, and then the challenges faced and the solutions we think could help us come out of the woods. And we trained people in private sector, public sector. We trained issuers, intermediaries. We trained the lawyers, the accountants. We trained the guys who do the rating. We even got local verifiers in Nigeria accepted by Climate Bonds Initiative in the UK. We organize conferences like this. We organize seminars, and That was one of our strategy, to create awareness. The second part was then to now tell potential issuers that if you indicate your interest to issue, we will help you develop the framework, and at no cost. Whatever cost we were to incur was being provided by the British government through FSD Africa. So they supported the program. Every year we get a grant to help us do this technical work of helping people to accept the concept of climate change, consider switching from brown finance to green finance, and then teaching them how to issue. Building the framework for them, walking them through the process, and holding them, ensuring that they follow the protocols, they understand the taxonomy, and also that they report annually on the use of proceeds. We've been doing that job. In a year, we could do up to 11 sessions, just teaching different stakeholder groups, whether you're in government or private sector. And we did it with fervor, with zeal. Even when we were laughed to scorn, we did it. Even when they didn't believe us, we did it. We didn't care. Because we knew that what we were saying would come to pass. We knew that it was true, we knew it was real. We knew that it had profits. It's not just about doing good. And then for the pension funds, we're lucky to have friends within those spaces. We had conversations, bilateral, and then we had official meetings. And when they were writing their guidelines, they gave us the draft to contribute. And we were able to inscribe the fact that there should be investments in ESG-related products in those guidelines. There's been a revised guideline published a few months ago now that has it categorically inserted that pension funds can invest in ESG-related products. Now, in Nigeria also, we benefited from two great policies. One is the Nigeria Sustainable Banking Principles, which the central bank, together with the banks in Nigeria, created, and they all signed onto it. And Access Bank took advantage of that principle, and they worked with us. We trained them. They issued the first certified corporate green bond in Africa. We also worked with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They also issued a policy document called the Nigeria Sustainable Finance Principles. And in that document, listed companies are encouraged to report on their compliance with climate change or ESG-related themes. So also with gender-related issues. So in Nigeria, there is this, can I call it a policy or an agreement, that you must include gender in your board. You must include gender in your considerations for investments. And so today in Nigeria, you have at least 30% of the banks, headed by women. And these are not small banks. These are some of the biggest banks in the country. Zenith Bank, Fidelity Bank, GT Bank, that's a Guaranty Trust Bank. These are some of the largest retail banks in Nigeria. So that gender piece was always there. We also got it, we reviewed the SEC rules and ensured that gender components was part of it. We also helped the SEC to expand their rules to ensure that it doesn't just cover green bond, but it covers green, social, sustainable, and sustainability-linked instruments. So some of this work we did behind the scene helped us to have an atmosphere that encouraged the growth of the issuances of green bonds. But we're going beyond that. We're already getting state governments to pay attention to the green space. So there's a state government currently that is working to issue a green bond. We also taught people on how to issue blue bonds. So those are part of the things we've done to encourage the growth of the green bond market in Nigeria.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I want to go back to what you just said, because what I heard from you is create the awareness, build the capacity, be part of a process, and then have systems that actually allow you to thrive in that sense. But some of us here would argue that we are doing the same thing in Kenya. You have worked in the Nigerian market, you've also worked in the Kenyan market for the past 7 years. What do you think is setting us back as a country?
I will say that I think you're not doing too badly. You're spending part of your energy supporting other parts of Africa. But I think you should look inwards also. You've supported Nigeria. I know you're doing some work in other African countries where you're helping to build their capital markets. You should also look inwards. I know your first green bond was to support students' accommodation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You should look at some of the other areas that people are mentioning where do you have challenges. I heard something around flooding and then drought. Those are some of the areas you could look at. We also have flooding challenges in Nigeria too. You could look at those areas and then you can then focus on them. We had to pick and choose our area. So if you look at the green bonds issued in Nigeria, the most common themes will be on renewable energy because there's a distinct energy gap in Nigeria. There's energy poverty. About 55% of the population do not have access to stable electricity. And if they do have, it's not from the grid. You understand? So we have to focus on our pain points. So what is your pain point? If you focus on the pain point and then show that there's some profitability in doing that, people will follow what you're saying. So if you have flooding and drought as a problem, address it. If you have access to water as a problem, that's another problem we have in Nigeria. Access to clean water. Water, sanitation, and hygiene are some of the themes that we also pursued. And then your policy framework must align because in this part of the world, government is very big in terms of influence on the general economy. Yeah. The government leads the way. So if you look at Nigeria, their government actually led the way. Aisha Mohammed was an environment minister in Nigeria, and she led the way. She encouraged the issuance of the first green bond. When she moved higher to the World Bank, she continued to support Nigeria. And that has been very, very useful for us, having the kind of support from the government space and from the DFI space. Now, the World Bank has been supportive too. The IFC, the local, also some local institutions, like as I mentioned, Access Bank, some other banks, Sterling Bank, Stanbic Bank, they've also been supportive. You have to get that ecosystem, the stakeholder ecosystem together, where you have government, private sector, and you have individuals with a commitment to driving this change. That is what I think you should be able to apply to Kenya to make it progress more in this space.
Thank you for that, Emmanuel. All those stakeholders that you listed here, including the government, are here. So we do hope that they have taken note of that. Now, to GIFT, on mobilizing institutional and retail investors through capital markets innovation, how is the NSE expanding green and sustainability-linked instruments such as green bonds and ESG indices to attract both institutional and retail investors?
First, let me say that the NSE has been on a very deliberate agenda to promote climate-focused financing. I think in 2019, we partnered with the Kenya Bankers Association to come up with the inaugural Kenya Green Bond Framework. And the idea was that then having that green bond framework would really accelerate the issuance of green bonds or other sustainability-linked products in the market. In 2021, we also launched our ESG disclosures guidance manual, and the idea was to also promote the reporting by our own listed companies and really to accelerate the awareness on sustainability and how that weaves into the day-to-day running of companies. And the idea, I think, for us as an exchange, with the proliferation of ESG and the ever-increasing need for us to really look at financing from a climate lens, then is to provide the infrastructure and the support system across the capital markets in order to promote issuance of products, but also to support capital market stakeholders to really come together to promote financial flows to this sector. So there are very many interventions that we have embarked on from a policy point of view, and I think most recently we launched our Sustainability Finance Center of Excellence together with the support of FSD Kenya. And this Center of Excellence is really geared towards supporting the issuance of climate-focused, sustainability-linked products within our markets. I think, suffice to say, we've only seen one green issuance, and I think when we talk about climate-focused financing, we really focus on the green bonds, and that's really where most people have put in a lot of their effort. But the program is really supposed to look at three key actors in the market. So on one hand, we have the issuers, we have investors, and then we have the market actors who are really supposed to come in and support these issuances. So if I, for example, take the Acorn Green Bond, which was the first green bond issuance in Kenya. First of all, we need to first have issuers in the market. And what that speaks to is then, do we have a deep pool of bankable projects that can actually be taken to market? And to Mr. Emmanuel's point here is that we need to look at what our pain points are and create viable products out of them. A lot of there's a theme around climate financing being grant focused, and but at the end of the day, in as much as we want to combine nature financing, climate, talk about climate resilience and all of that, at the end of the day, investors are still looking for a return. So we need to still structure bankability into our products so that they can compete against other asset classes. So from an issuer perspective, I think for us, through the program, is to first create awareness among potential issuers. If you look at Africa, we are 92% green. That means that there's a lot of opportunity for us to actually come up with viable, bankable projects that can be brought to the market at scale. We've been working very closely with the e-mobility industry, for example, in Kenya, and saying how do we promote the industry, which is still very nascent, to actually come to market, leverage on both institutional and retail capital to promote the growth of the industry as a whole. For example, I know there are some of the companies that are looking at potentially issuing green bonds in our market to finance, for example, the batteries that go into the e-mobility industry. And that's a very key thing for us. So one of the main objectives of the program is to really capacitate the issuers for them to understand the issuance process, to understand how the capital markets work, that sometimes it can be deemed a very complex journey, and they need to understand all the risks that are involved and what support can be provided through the capital markets. So one of the key interventions we are really looking to do for the issuers is to provide technical assistance. And technical assistance comes in the form of coming up with the green bond frameworks, for example, because that's the first point of contact. So do the companies have a viable green bond framework on which they can then go out to issue products? There are other costs that are also involved. For example, you need to pay your transaction advisors, you need to get your green certification, you need to get, for example, if you're going to incorporate guarantees, all of these come at a cost. And I think the DFI community and the government as well needs to come and step in and say, how do we then rationalize these costs and make it very simple and seamless for potential issuers to come to market. For the investors, as we build a bankable pipeline of projects, we then want you to come to the market and leverage some of the capital market instruments, such as funds. So why can't we, for example, explore the issuance of sustainability-linked funds on the exchange that can come in then to offtake these projects as and when they come to market? We are also trying to create awareness among some of our DFI partners, some of our fund managers, to also look at these asset classes at the exchange level then that can really accelerate the flow of capital towards this sector. We speak about lazy pension assets, and it's true. Our pension assets currently sit at 2.23 trillion. Mm-hmm. We have bank deposits sitting at about 5 trillion Kenya shillings, and all of these can, if we could even channel 5% or 1% of these funds to sustainable finance, sustainability-linked products, then that would really accelerate the flow of capital.
Thank you, Gift. I want to sort of like throw a spanner in the works to two panelists here and hone in on one thing you have repeated 3 times while you spoke, that there aren't enough bankable projects for investment. And I know Catherine at SOMO and Ernest at KCIC work at the heart of sort of de-risking these investments. Do you agree with what he just said? And what are you doing to help de-risk this?
Okay, thank you, Nakami. So at KCSC, our role actually in terms of providing pipeline begins from the point of identification because we work at the grassroots level where we are looking even at nano enterprises, small and medium, and now try and scale them to become more bankable. And over like the past 12 years that KCSC has existed, we've worked with close to 3,500 enterprises. One of the biggest challenges that we've actually seen is that the conventional financiers do not have a mechanism that then can evaluate the risk within the climate enterprises. So you'll find, if I go, for example, to a commercial bank, and I'm telling them I want to do, for example, a hostel, they know how to evaluate the risk for construction. But if I go to them and tell them I want to set up a nature-based solution facility, then they will be wondering, what are you talking about? And it may take a bit of time for them maybe to understand. So I think one of the things that as KCSC we are doing is now to work with these financial institutions, whether they are SACCOs, microfinance, whether they are banks, to try and now also build their capacity in terms of what are the risks that are there within the climate enterprises. Then also looking in terms of research and innovation. You'll find that as an organization, we work with a number of SMEs, but if you look across Kenya, and as he has mentioned, there's now ESG reporting that is required for mainly most of the corporate organizations. But they also lack the need in terms of research, innovation, and we are trying to develop now a mechanism where the SMEs that we work with could actually be the engine for the innovation for some of these corporates. So if we can then bridge that gap where you see there's a more collaboration between the corporates, the SME, financial institution, and that then is backed up by policy, where now we call upon government to look at what are some of the incentives, whether they are physical, whether they are monetary, that then will spur collaboration and investment in some of these ventures. It's only that way that then we'll start having more bankable pipeline that most of these institutions are then talking about. Also now moving from just the normal low-value nodes or value chains, because maybe what they've been seeing is maybe I want to do, for example, a portion meal. You just do maize meal or cassava flour and all that. But then can we move them to now more higher value products and other innovations? So for example, now there's e-mobility, he has talked about it. Can we then start talking about assembly in Kenya, for example? We are talking about value addition. For a long time, we've always exported raw materials. So can we start now again encouraging some of these enterprises to move a notch higher and do value addition? So it's only in that way that then they can now start proving that they're actually bankable and then move them to the next
step. Thank you, Ernest. Catherine?
Every type of business requires its own type of capital depending on the stage that it's at. And what we have seen in working within the communities we've worked in, because we focus in the micro and small space, is that you need to grow that business. So definition of bankable, from your definition, yes, you might say they're not there, but SOMO has supported so far over 10,000 businesses by training them, and then we have financed over 1,000 businesses. And these businesses have received $2 million in capital. And we have seen that you start them on a small amount, if it's a micro enterprise, of maybe 50,000 Kenya shillings. It gets to a point where now they're asking for 2 million Kenya shillings, and the next stage then will be for them to access commercial capital. So in our experience, that shows us that many of the businesses will need different forms of financing. So you start them on a grant, small grant, then maybe you move them to concessional debt, then you find them transitioning to commercial capital. And we really believe that if we're going to actually support businesses, then this is the way to go. When SOMO began, we thought that it would be sufficient to give these businesses training on business development training. Then we soon realized that's not sufficient. Next, maybe you need to give them access to markets. And we started thinking of what platforms can we give them to get access to markets. And we started partnering with different organizations, and even KCAC is one of them, where you have markets where you have these entrepreneurs selling. Then next, we realized then they need access to finance. And the question then was, what kind of financing do they need? What blended models might we need to come up with to help their businesses? And so we helped them by helping them set up their books, because if a bank is going to look at a business, they'll start by asking them, where are your books? And maybe they don't know how to do it. So we gave them digital tools that allow them to keep their books of account in both English and Swahili. And now in the refugee camps, we have these digital tools in Somali language. And so then with that, they're able to start thinking of how would they present books to a financer who wants to look at, who's more interested in, who's seeing you as a risky investment. And then when we move from there, we realized then they would need a platform where you can know this is a kind of business, this is how it's performing. And so we have an invest platform where you can look at a business and see this is its performance and express interest in it. And I think by different actors working in different ways and collaborating, it will help us then move these micro and small enterprises to be bankable in the sense that we call bankable. And I really want to give an example of one sector we are looking at right now in e-mobility, where we thought we have border drivers, and this we might see them just as a border driver, but this is an entrepreneur eventually, or someone who's doing electric vehicle with an Uber with whichever of drive electric. So if they're using these electric vehicles, they'll need a form of financing. So what do we want to think about? How do we support such a business? And we realized you can blend, maybe grant, give them concessional debt, help them access bank commercial capital. You blend that and see what will happen. Will we be able to have more borders moving into e-mobility? And the first test of the cohort we've done that is starting to show that there is potential in thinking like that. And I think we need to now start to think more in how we can combine different ways of financing by different actors working together in this way. And we come up with our own way of supporting micro and small enterprises, because the reality of Africa is our markets are different. And so we have to think in a different way when it comes to financing models.
Yeah. Francis, building up on what Catherine just talked about the realities of the African market, at Village Capital, we often use the term purpose-suited capital, which simply just means matching the right capital to the needs of the entrepreneur. Can you speak about how Raising Capital is thinking about designing, syndicating instruments that would then better match the realities of African entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in this climate space?
Thank you. And I think the posts that have been given are apt pretty much across. And I like that you said actually that our markets are different. So for me, how I'd explain it is maybe just a bit of facts. When it comes to fundraising, everyone talks about the unicorns and trying to raise all this amount of money to create unicorns. On average, there are maybe 1,200 unicorns in the world. So the first thing I keep saying is, can we stop chasing unicorns? Because they're not sustainable. We cannot all create unicorns, number one. Number two, in the US, and I like what Emmanuel said about us coping. In the US, the small businesses play a very big role, but on average, the registered small businesses in the US are 35 million. In Africa, depending on who you ask, we have around 300 million businesses. Now, the problem with these businesses is most of them are what you call the owner account businesses. And I think that's what Somo is trying to resolve, in that they are not run as businesses. They are run as an individual who wakes up and goes and does his own thing to just earn a living. And it creates the challenge around having the right issuers, because if you look at the non-climate side, there is a funding gap of around $400 billion across Africa. On the climate side, we are talking of around $300 billion. Now, that's a huge, significant funding gap, yet the finances that are supposed to come in are already starting to complain that there is no, let me call it, good deal flow. The businesses are not investor ready, or they're not qualified for these transactions. So for me, it comes down to, for a business to actually be able to access capital, that business must be run effectively. And my saying, or our saying, is very simple. An investor-ready business is a very well-run business, whether it's an MSME, whether it's an SME, or whether it's a unicorn that it's raising. We need to accept that Africa, the way our businesses are run, are different. But at the same time, we need to change it so that we stop having these businesses which are run and they sort of become non-existent when the individual either gets sick or is no longer their cycle of life. And I think the best way is, one, to consider what SOMO is doing. For us, what we are doing, for example, is we've noticed that 90% of businesses we engage in are SMEs or MSMEs. We've also created a platform that actually helps them match to investors, give them all this advisory, but in a far more affordable way that they can access it. So I just want us to accept that we are dealing with a climate issue, but at the same time, just like the same challenges we've been getting with the other businesses, we need to resolve them. KCS is doing a very good job in trying to make sure these businesses are prepared, they're ready, the ideas come to life, and then prepare them for the next round of funding. But if we do not do that, then the government may have the right policies, the listed market, the NSE may be ready to offtake them. The investors will continue being shy because they do not see the opportunities. And the owners, the entrepreneurs, the businesses will keep complaining that there is no funding, yet it's just now that the funding is there. It's not matching because the businesses themselves are not ready. Yep.
All right. Thank you for that. Catherine, I just have one follow-up question for you. You have the platform SOMO Invest. How do you think retail investors can participate as micro-investors through platforms like that? Because I think that's a really important conversation for us to have as we wrap up.
Yeah, I think SOMO Invest is an excellent platform. If you're able to get onto the SOMO website, somoafrica.org, there is a place where it's written invest. So what that means is that anyone in this room can go there and look at the different types of businesses that have been supported by SOMO. And you can select a business there and express interest in investing in it. So even myself, there are some businesses that we work with that I'm interested in, maybe because they're in items that I like. So anyone can go there, whether you have, I don't know how much, 10,000 shillings to invest or millions of shillings. It's a place to start. And I think we should all try such platforms. And I'm seeing some of our entrepreneurs here. And so I'm hoping that they can get investment from there.
All right. In the interest of time and because we started late, one parting shot from each panelist on how we mobilize African capital. One sentence, 1 minute. We can start with Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. So I'll go back to what I said during my opening remarks. We should copy and innovate. We're no longer in college or in school. It's not a crime to copy. The US, even though people say Donald Trump is not big on climate change, the US is making great progress in that area with their green banks. The green banks fund renewable energy projects. They get into agreements with the original equipment manufacturers so that people in that space can have access to equipment to expand their business. They give sub-market rates to money. They give money at sub-market rates to investors, to those who are implementing renewable energy projects. They also source funding from what they call rate payers. So, for example, in Nigeria, electricity has been put in bands, band A, band B, band C. Those in band A have more access to electricity and they pay more. Part of that money, part of the charge could be made available to green banks, to fund green banks. We have talked about lazy capital. The pension funds can invest part of their money in green banks, where the central bank can create incentives to enhance the development of green banks. It's only when you have these quasi-public-private sector type vehicle that you can expand access to funding for climate-resilient SMEs. We cannot wait for the FDBs. They're doing a great job, but they cannot do enough. You mentioned 50 billion, but you say we're not anywhere near there. So we can wait. Not everybody can have access to those type of fundings, but if you make the vehicles available, you multiply them, they are in various communities and states like in the US, then many more SMEs can have access to funding at an affordable rate and expand their businesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So what we heard from you is copy and then contextualize. Gift?
I think for me it's partnerships. I think climate change is a global problem. Climate financing equally is a global problem. So we can't all sit in our corners and try to solve for a universal challenge. We need to collaborate, come together. All the different actors that are required to have a seat on the table should be willing to come and have that conversation. So it's the capital markets, it's the accelerators, the incubators, the financiers, the DFI community, the guarantee providers, all the stakeholders that are required to bring issuance and awareness to climate financing need to speak to each other and come to the market to find viable solutions to drive forward the conversation.
Thank you, Gift. Ernest, one sentence, please.
I think for me, it will be about building capacity for Africa climate enterprises, build their investment readiness. Then we document some success stories, case studies, then create awareness in terms of what are the types of financing available, what instruments are there, and with that, then we should move the African enterprises to market.
Thank you so much, Francis.
Thank you. For me, I'd say is readiness, that the businesses, the entrepreneurs have to be ready to access this capital and also utilize the platform SOMO, our Capital Connect Africa, so that you can be able to efficiently prepare and be ready for the capital that will be coming in. Thank you.
For me, it would be, if you haven't invested as an individual, invest so that you can learn how to do it. And then for the rest of the actors, as you've just mentioned, we all need to think collaboratively and think localized so that we can actually come up with solutions that make sense for our market.
Thank you so much to our panelists. I think when we started, Joseph did say, we talk less and build more. What I got from this conversation is all 5 of you, together with the DFI, AFDB, should sit together in one room. Let's stop talking about collaborating and actually get it done. Now, help me in thanking our panelists today for joining us as they leave a stage. And we do believe that the future of Africa's green transition actually lies in our hands. So let's start to build, let's talk, more building. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much to the panel for that insightful conversation. Let's have a quick photo opportunity there before we transition to the next session. Thank you very much. Appreciate it for that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that conversation, which was our second leg in the plenary. Remember, we started with a presentation from FSD Kenya. I want to guide us on how we progress from here. So we want to have a very quick health break. Tea is served right behind here. So you will exit via this door and grab a cup of tea and coffee. Let's do that for about 20 minutes. We shall all converge, all of us, back here before we break out into our respective deal rooms. So please, breakout rooms rather. Let's make our way for tea. Meanwhile, there shall be a press conference in room 4. Room number 4, so all my friends and colleagues from the 4th estate, let's go to room 4 and have our presser. Meanwhile, the rest, let's have a refresher here and make our way back in 20 minutes. Thank you very much.